And there we go.
All right, so let me ask everybody, can you see our webcams? Because I know some of them, I don't think you can see mine because I think I just killed it.
You did.
All right, I will unkill it. So we're trying to actually figure out why it's not showing any longer in our recordings. When we send out the recordings, it wasn't sharing that. Somebody's photobombing.
Gotcha.
Wave at my husband as he's going through. Yeah. So, okay. So I'm just trying to get a sense of audience view. Hopefully everybody can see everything we need to see.
Yes. All right, so recording's going. So let's go ahead and start this sucker up.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I am excited to be with everyone today. And what I thought would be a lot of fun when we kicked our session off is, and I always try to do this, where we have a conversation about who are we thinking of when we put this session together today. And what we're specifically looking for is we're wanting to talk with anybody that is currently in a role or business that, deep in the back of your mind, you may have this desire or dream to start your own thing. Or maybe you are starting a business and you've got something that is well underway and you're trying to think of how you can expand and add more streams of revenue. And then we're also going to be talking about just how you get started with a sales effort. And there's a lot of the getting started with a sales effort right now that's relevant, based on, even if you've got established processes and customers, I'll tell you that the pandemic has certainly created a new normal that people don't know how to function in. And I know new normal is one of those terms that's probably getting overused right now, right up there with unprecedented. But it truly is. We just don't know how to behave. Chris regularly talks about, what do they go out and do?
They go out and buy all the toilet paper.
That's right. So things are jacked up when you can't buy toilet paper anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So with that, I thought it would be a lot of fun to kind of walk you through how I started my thing in 2003 was when all of this began. And we're going to just have a conversation today. Chris is going to go through and try to keep me on track, at least as much as I think anyone can. And we're going to go through kind of an interview process. As we're going through this, understand that what I'd really like to help you with is recognize that there is a path to success and there is a process. And the more you can learn from people who have been down this path before, the shorter you can make that process for your own career and your own business. So that's the objective. In this month, we're going to really be focusing a lot on the path to revenue and the path to creating a sustainable business that may be independent of you delivering time and services. So with that, we're going to dive in and get started. So Chris, you ready?
I certainly am. But we got to talk about the stages of business evolution. So you want to go to the next slide?
Yep.
So Brendan and I were discussing this, and we thought the best way to do this was to divide the 4 stages, or divide the stages of business evolution up into 4 stages, so that we could ask our questions appropriately. So as you're watching this, as we're going on, as I'm asking her questions, we're going to just have a short slideshow. We're just going to stay on one slide. If you have a question about pre-startup, the planning stages and the getting the idea and getting the motivation to start up, then the actual startup, gathering the information that you need, doing all the legal things that you have to do,
and getting to revenue.
Right, and then the scaling once you have the company up and running, and then the sustainability part of it. And I did add another section after this is insight, is what she has learned, because you're going to make mistakes in marketing and business and everything, and the key is to try not make them twice. And it's that old adage, if I only knew then what I know now. So let's go ahead and go to pre-startup.
Okay, before I do that, let's get a sense from our group, because I know I've got folks on our call that are in a lot of different stages themselves in terms of their business and career. What I'd like to get a sense of is, are you in the idea stage with your own venture? Have you already started something and you're working on getting to revenue? Are you at revenue and you're thinking of how you scale it beyond selling your time and effort? Or are you at sustainability and thinking about the actual expansion plans for your business? So do a quick response in the questions, because I like to know who's on our call today.
Expansion. Okay.
So we'll take just a second here and catch up.
So I think from the people that I see on the call, yeah, changing the motto. Yeah. Most of the people that I know,
Okay.
I'm familiar with, are maybe scaling or sustainability.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, let's dive in then and get started.
So, everybody, this is what this is Brendan's origin story. If anybody's ever watched a Marvel movie or anything, so I am going to be asking her some of the questions about her business, and unbeknownst to her, is I have a couple that are not on the list. So
Oh dear.
yeah, I am that I'm that host that makes people uncomfortable. So great.
Sweet.
Yeah, right.
I love it.
So we're going to start with an easy one. Is where did the idea come from to start up your business?
Well, in 2002, and I'm going to give dates so that people have an understanding of kind of the context, and you can also relate it to what was going on in the world at that time. I was doing sales training for Sandler north of the river with Steve Montague. And I had one of my customers that came in one day, and she was a former marketing director at Sprint. And you may actually know her, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Her name's Chris as well. And she came into my office and closed the door. And she said, I got a problem with the class and the curriculum as it's being taught. And I was like, oh, okay. And she said, you're in here and you're telling us this is how you go find customers. But yet, whenever I've had interviews, and the Sandler philosophy is there's a lot of networking and there's a lot of cold calling that goes into it. And there's some advertising and purchase leads. And, that's kind of the traditional path of how you find prospects. And she said, you're teaching us this, but yet if I interview the people in here that are making the most money, they haven't made a cold call in years. And she said, my problem is I want to know how to do that. And that's what I want to pay for. And she said, so I want you to go find out how they did it and come back and teach me. And I was like, ooh, that kind of sounds like a cool idea. So that's where it all kind of began, was with that idea of creating a prospecting solution that was based on referrals that could be bootstrapped and that did not involve an intensive marketing effort.
I get it. So let me ask you this then: what was your motivation, right, to go out? Because it was a brilliant idea and it was a great aha moment. But for most people, the idea of starting a business is overwhelming, terrifying. So what was your big personal motivation in doing this?
Well, and I wrote the class actually while I was on maternity leave with my daughter Jocelyn.
Right.
And when I wrote the class, it was with the help of Chris, who was the client, and Donna Craig, that was actually on our call. I think it was last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered writing it, and it was something that we originally just thought this was kind of fun, and it was a side hustle.
Right.
And then in 2005, I kind of came to that moment in, I think, my life and career where it wasn't just about, I mean, I had 3 kids at that point, and I was finding myself working really long hours to really create success for my employer and not really build anything that was sustainable
Right.
beyond just my job. I mean, when I left the employer, there wasn't going to be a mark left there. There wasn't anything that I was leaving behind. And I also I was really a bit of a rebel. I thought I could do it, and I wanted to do it my way. And so finally, at some point, I just had enough of the building something for everybody else. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready to do this for me.
Outstanding. And I get that, because that was kind of mine, is the impending birth of my son, and different, maybe a glass ceiling at the company I was at. And um, I don't know, do you find this to be true? I don't know if you find this to be true, but for me, I'm the one at any company that digs in and does 20% more than I'm supposed to on my job description, and
Yep.
finds out the answers and steps in where a lot of people are afraid to step in and make the decisions. And so it seemed the natural progression for me. So what did you do to kind of validate your idea? When did you know it was going to be a viable business?
Well, this is what was really cool. So I wrote the class in 2003, but you notice that there was a date that between 2003 and then starting my business in 2006, when I was working for Steve at Sandler, he was very generous and gave me access to a client base of highly motivated and engaged participants. And, the benefit to him is it allowed him to offer a value added solution that he didn't directly have to pay for.
Right.
And I basically delivered the class for free to a group of probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 people. And then after that, it was so well received by the initial participants who went through the program that, then we started saying, okay, so let's tack on $750 for the class. And at the time, the class was 2 hours a week for 4 weeks. And they tacked that on to what they were paying for their sales training membership.
Right.
And so then after that, I had kind of a built-in revenue stream based on my employer who was actually promoting my program and leading to my success, which that was so incredibly helpful. And I can tie back, it's funny, I can tie most of my business today back to those initial classes that started years and years and years ago.
Yeah, that's outstanding. You had a built-in place to run a beta test and develop and make changes and just immediately generate revenue. So that's outstanding. I'd like to talk to the people who are listening right now. We're moving into the startup phase. So if you have any questions for Brendan about her experience in startups, go ahead and type your questions now. And I've got a few of them that I'm going to ask her. So and then I'll get to yours. So I know when I started my company up I may be an oddball though, but I went and took like a Myers-Briggs class and things like that. It was kind of career development kind of a class at a college, and it told me to do what I'm doing basically. And I went to a bunch of different people who knew owners of agencies and things like that, and marketing firms, and I interviewed those people and asked them, tell me what's difficult about this. Don't tell me what's great. So what I want to ask you is, what kind of information gathering did you do?
Well, this is part of what I did then versus what I recommend people do now.
Yeah.
I just went for it. But then I'm one of those people that I have a tendency to ready, fire, aim.
Really?
Which is why you are the perfect balance for me, Chris. Because I just basically, I went in one day and gave my notice. And it was funny because Steve asked me, he said, so what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. I just think I want to go do something different. And he was, like I said, he was very, very generous. And I can't speak highly enough of his attitude towards supporting me and whatever my new effort was. I did have a non-compete with Sandler that said I could not deliver sales training. And he was very clear. He said, you know, you're in Kansas, and Kansas, under the way that they work, he said, I'm not going to stop you from earning a living. I'm not even going to attempt to stop you from earning a living because you've got to care for your family. But with that being said, I knew that I signed the agreement with, you know, what I was going to have to live with. And I knew that I couldn't live with violating it. And so I went in and actually worked in-house as a sales manager for one of our clients
Right.
and helped them with building sales processes. And then during what I did is there was 8 months, and then that I was actually engaged kind of on a contract basis as an interim role. And that allowed me to really wrap my head around what I wanted my business to be for my lifestyle. Because what I didn't want it to be was basically another 80-hour-a-week job,
Right.
and only making less money.
Yeah.
So what I did is I went through the 8 months, and then there was somebody that I had met actually through the Central Exchange in one of the groups there that was called the Horse Lovers Group, and her name was Lori Kravitz. And at the time, she was leading the Go Connection and the Missouri Women's Business Center.
Mhm.
And I just basically went to Lori and said, hey, I think I want to do this. She's like, great, come be a mentor for me. So she actually had me do mentoring for some of their startups with their sales efforts, and at the time I had the productive prospecting course. And then I also had another idea in my mind of creating something that was called the Rainmakers Roundtable, that would be a weekly session that would help startups with building their path to revenue and their path to success. And she said, come on in and I'll promote the course to our startups and see if I can help you. And it was really kind of interesting because I learned all of the different ways people can start very intriguing businesses. So there was one individual, I'm going to share a little bit because they actually weren't in Kansas City. There was this interesting program that they affectionately called the Convicts to Commerce. So this is an example of why sometimes it's not always the best idea to have, you know, government creating entrepreneurial programs, because there was kind of a disconnect. They thought that if they threw $10,000 microloans at people who were coming out of the prison system, that would help them start their own business so that they didn't have to get a job. And so I got to work with several of those individuals. I think the most interesting one was the lady that had bag check charges that created a mobile salon out of a Cadillac. Nice. That she took the top off of, and the lift chair was in the passenger seat. And I mean, it was interesting. So I did that just long enough to recognize that startups were not my jam.
Right.
And I love working with startups now, but the difference is I work with very successful career professionals, and I have learned that there are a lot of people that will be successful in startups, and there are people that will not. And if you work with successful career professionals, you will find people that will be able to successfully build and grow a venture.
Right. So let's talk about a little bit, because you've mentioned a lot of this already, and I have some questions from the audience. Because I want to start to talk about, you know, your processes and what you did, because there's, you know, like the financial aspect of it and the legal aspect of it. And one of the questions that we have, or one of the comments that we had, is how important it is to make sure that you're covering the criteria for the IRS, right? And the difference between legally what a hobby is and what a business is. And so did you pull in people to help you with maybe setting up the legal aspect of it and picking an LLC and did you pull in an accountant and all that kind of things? Or did you just kind
Oh
of,
dear. You mean all of those questions that would actually mean that I thought this through really well?
right,
Oh, it's funny. And my accounting professional and my tax advisor, and she's on the call or she's on
right,
our webinar today.
right,
So it's funny. So she can call me out on any of this
right,
because I've worked with her ever since then. So I did not think it through nearly well enough, and she had to do a lot of cleanup in order to get me on the right track. So I certainly recommend that you do seek advice from very competent advisors, because I had had so many people that told me set it up like this and set it up like that. And the problem is whenever you get somebody telling you how to set it up that is in a role, it's kind of like I'm trying to think. There's a phrase. It's opinions are like noses. Everybody has one, and everyone thinks theirs is the
yeah,
best. Yeah. So it's a case of they all had kind of their opinion of how I should set it up. And what I have since learned is that it's much better to spend the money and get an advisor to help you establish it the right way, particularly if you are going to be creating a knowledge product or anything that's related to intellectual property. It's really important that you do get somebody to help you with that is competent, that's going to help you protect your interests.
right.
So
Yeah,
I did not do that well enough. One of my lessons learned is get help. And you will also, our sponsor for this event is the Women's Business Center, and they have access to so many free courses in their Wednesday webinar series. That's the entrepreneurship series.
right,
And they tell you everything from the setting it up to registration to, I mean, they walk you through the course. So now I recommend you kind of go through that training to look at the options and then work with a professional that will actually help you then take the factors that you've learned and understand a little bit better and relate them to your own personal situation.
right. And that's excellent advice. And I was telling my son this is I never learned anything from being right. I learned an awful lot from being wrong, from making mistakes. So that covers
Oh,
like
isn't that the truth?
yeah. So that covers the legal and financial. What about like the brand and finding a location and getting the word out and things like that? What kind of process did you do for that?
Well, the thing is I started my business mostly because I wanted the flexibility and I wanted to be around for my kids.
Right.
And so I wanted to do something out of my home. So the location was just figuring out what my model was going to look like. And the fact that now I made the decision of I would rent space for training or use client space as needed. And that I learned that the training space is easier to come by. And now it's even easier because, here's my training room. It's located on GoToMeeting, and we can have up to, I think, 100, we can have 101 people on this forum as it is.
Right.
And for an additional like $40 a month, I can upgrade it to where we can have 1,000 on the call.
Right.
So, it's a lot easier now than it was then.
Right. And how do you get the word out though to draw your clients in and things like that, or to find your prospects?
Well, I have always learned, and I've always followed my own advice as far as find collaboration and find someone that has an audience that needs to be served with your talents
Right.
in order for them to do their job. And prospecting and finding new customers is such it's such a pain point for businesses of all shapes and sizes. And it's a difficult topic to really understand and be able to teach. So I have a little bit of a rare and unique talent in that area. And I went to organizations, it started with Steve, where I picked a niche that wasn't being served by Sandler and created a solution and said, hey, send me people that I can try this out on. And then it evolved to Lori supporting me through the Go Connection and Women's Business Center. And now it's the Kansas Women's Business Center and, the 1KC. They merged years and years and years ago and became 1KC for women. And you can just basically follow that path. I have always relied on associations and providing value and benefit to organizations that need my talents in order to support their membership.
Right, excellent. So let's go ahead and go to the scaling slide. And then what I want to ask the audience again is, I like, first of all, Debbie's comment here is I can't tell you how many people started off wrong and how much harder it is to fix than to do it right the first time. I agree. So, and everybody who's listening, if you have any questions, comments, ideas, whatever about the scaling of your business, go ahead and start asking those now, and I'll get to them when as we go along.
So before we dive into that though, and I want to stay on the startup for just a second.
Sure.
To Debbie's point, what I want you to recognize is that you do want to start it right, but don't take the fear of starting wrong and let it hold you back from starting.
Right.
And I walked you through the process, and we've got access to resources. There's going to be a slide at the very end that shows you the Women's Business Center links to go take the classes and look at all the different options that are there.
Right.
And I'm delighted to introduce you to Debbie and financial advisors and bankers that love supporting startups and can help you make those decisions. But if this is something you're going to do, the timing is never better than now to do it. And I recommend giving yourself a timeline of when you will start by. And even if you start it as your side hustle, start it and do it the right way. But just don't let that fear of being wrong paralyze you, because too many people fall into the analysis paralysis and they take forever and then they just don't move. Cairo's point, waiting for perfection leads to paralysis.
Right.
So at some point you're going to have to go, and don't let the I don't know where to start hold you back from going.
Excellent. So, and yeah, that's so true. Is perfection leads to paralysis, and that's one of the things that I found out in my experience is I'm kind of obsessive about gathering information and setting things up. So while I don't get into paralysis, the benefit of the way I set mine up is that later on, instead of having partnerships that own half of my business, I have partnerships like with Brendan now, right? And we both are, have our own entity and our own, taxes and all this kind of stuff. So there's really, I had a friend tell me years and years and years ago is that partnerships in business is like a marriage without any of the fun stuff, right? And you just a lot of times you don't know, if you pick the right person, and then in this way, Brendan's protected, I'm protected, and there's only she gets the benefit of what I do well, and I get the benefit of what she does well, and so it's just to me it's a safer way to go about this. But I completely agree about just get moving. Sometimes you just got to look at your feet and take the next step. That's the old saying is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Well, and I did start when I started originally, and you were actually referencing this yesterday when we were prepping for this,
right?
Where my original entity had 3 partners in it, and we are pretty much equal partners. And the partners didn't want to go full time with it, and they turned it over to me to
Right.
run with.
Right.
And I'm still friends with both of them to this day.
Sure.
And Donna's still a great client. And then in 2006, I started my own thing. That's when I kind of took the business that had belonged to three people and ran with it under my own. It was 100% mine at that point. And then I did that to 2008 when I formed SalesWorks with a partner at that time, that I did not want to do any of the operations. I didn't want to deal with employees. And I actually had the minority ownership in SalesWorks. And in 2012, corporate America and a steady paycheck and retirement and stock options called him away. He was in HR, and took him back into, I can't imagine how anyone would walk away from SalesWorks to go become director of global recruiting for a multinational organization and be over 5 continents. It did, and he left me.
Right.
And then here I am again, all by my little lonesome with SalesWorks. In 2012, it became all mine. And at that point, I made the decision, and that actually leads into scaling. I made the decision that it was going to be me, and I would scale through technology and through products and through systems, and not through employees. And my goal has been to build $1 million business with an employee of one.
Right. And that's kind of in my research and starting my businesses, um, I went and talked to people who are successful, not just business owners, but who are successful and in the same kind of industry that I was in, that I am in. And one of the first things a person told me was never hire, always contract. And me being me, thinking I know something that I really don't, I hired a bunch of people and got a building and started building a monument to myself, which is not necessarily the smartest idea, because you're not, in this iteration of my business now, I am very agile, and I can pivot and things like that. Um, it's like the difference between sailing on a little tiny boat and a giant ship. A giant ship takes a long time to turn around, right? And um, but I had to make the mistakes though, and have the big staff, bunch of employees and things like that. And it's while it was fun, and I did make a lot of money at that time, I like the iteration it is now. And I think that the way society is going, and especially with the pandemic and stuff, is people are starting to work more at home. People are starting to be a contractor for big corporations rather than an employee and things like that. So I think you and I were just maybe a decade ahead of our time. So,
Well, maybe not.
right.
Maybe it's the case. I think that it's a case of you and I needed to go down this path so that we were here to serve the people that need us now.
Right.
And the fact that we are currently if you just look at the evolution of work, there's so many studies that are showing that this year there will be so many more contract workers than there are W-2 employees, or the traditional 9 to 5.
Right.
It's just 9 to 5 is going to go away.
Yeah.
And if you're currently working in a 9 to 5, and when you think about scaling your business and adding people, I think it's very important that you do really think about how you maximize every dollar you spend.
Right.
And for instance, we talk a lot, and are going to be talking a lot this month. Beyond today, our emphasis this month is all about startups, and it's all about creating products and services based on your knowledge and ideas and experience. And I do encourage you to make sure that you just become a regular with our conversations that we're having here, because there are so many different ways that you can scale your approach. And even through, right now, Chris and I are evaluating how we're going to scale and offer fractional services for people that need it without selling our time directly. And we can do that because there are so many amazingly talented people out there that may want to work 20 or 30 hours a week and make a decent wage and not have to be tied to a 9 to 5 or an office.
Right.
And we can scale our efforts through connecting them to people that need their help, and it fits the budget. So there's a lot of that that's going on. And I know that there are people, like David's on our call, and he's in fractional leadership. And he actually can work as a fractional CEO or COO for companies that are in turnaround or going through transition times that they've never gone through before. You can have access, and he's part of an organization of, I think it's almost 100 people that are all seasoned executives that you can engage for that. So there's so many different ways. And I almost recommend looking at, if you want to deliver your work directly, perhaps you need to look at collaborating with other people that have your talents as well, so
Right.
that you can partner.
Right. So let me ask you this: is roughly how long do you think it took before you started to earn enough money from sales of the product to kind of stabilize the business? I mean, how from startup to where now you could be at a point of, okay, now I got to figure out how to scale. How long do you think that took you?
Well, when I started my business, my husband told me that he was very clear and very supportive. He said, he's he said, you don't have to earn all of the money, but you have to earn enough that you prove that this is not a hobby,
Right.
and you've got to get to revenue. So my job was paying the mortgage, and at the time, I think our mortgage was $800.
Right.
And so I really didn't have to earn very much every month. And my first year, I actually started out, I had 3 clients,
Hmm.
and there was a mortgage loan officer, there was an attorney, and there was a financial advisor. And those 3 people, as well as Lori, contributed to my total income, to where my first year I netted $18,000 over and above what my expenses were.
Right.
So that was a good year. And then my second year, I think it was 45,000. And it's one of those things that every year I pretty much doubled for several years, but I got to where it replaced my 9 to 5 income
Right.
at about year 3. But
Right.
I will tell you that I learned so much during that process that we've been able to, it's kind of like you find yourself making the same mistakes over. And what I learned to do was avoid a lot of those mistakes in the first place. And that's part of the benefit of working as a coach now, is we've now figured out how to take this path where a lot of our clients are replacing their corporate incomes within 12 to 18 months.
Right.
And only they're working with a lot more flexibility and freedom. But it's not an easy 12 to 18 months.
Oh, no, 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 no. If it is, everybody would do it. So
That's right.
let's go ahead and move to sustainability, because we're running short on time. So we'll go to the next slide. Again, anybody has any points that they want to bring up about sustainability, go ahead and put them in the questions pane. So how did you scale it beyond the original offering? What processes and things did you put in place? How did you plan? I mean, I know you and I have had the conversation a million times about, we've looked at success leaves clues, and we've looked at different models that we both admire, right? And so, what did you do to kind of get it beyond your original offering?
Well, what I recognized, and this is the challenge of what you fall into with consulting, is you can make a lot of money, and you fall into you're seduced by the hourly wage that could be anywhere from $250 an hour to $1,000 an hour.
Mhm.
And then you think, well, I'll just sell more of my time. And you don't look at you don't, and those that are on the call in manufacturing are going to get this. You only have so many units available if you're selling your direct knowledge. And at some point, and I recognized that I had about 20 units a week in terms of hours to sell, because I still had to run my business and have all the systems and everything else that still functioned. And I always needed to have at least, and then of course I always needed to sell. So with that, I would top out at what my income could be. So I started evaluating, I guess it was about 5, 6 years ago, what some of the other paths were that I could take to scale. Because remember, I did not want to grow through employees.
Right.
And I tried it with an independent contractor and it was a disaster. It was
Right.
so bad. She actually ended up, and this is a process, and why one of my biggest mistakes that I made was hiring the wrong person, and took my concepts and ideas and went and created products around them
Right.
that, I mean, were direct. It was just a direct, not even attempting to really change the concept.
Right.
And that's the thing that I think when we all start our business, we all start with an idea that's based on what we're doing.
Right.
But I think the difference between theft and innovation has to do with whether or not you actually take that concept. It's kind of like 9 Steps to Productive Prospecting is loosely based on a program that I took called Professionally Targeting Referrals.
Right.
That there were some really cool concepts out of that. And I thought, okay, this is really neat. I think I can do it better.
Right.
And if you compare the 2 courses, even then, when I first started it, I still have my workbooks from way back then. And you compare that to the workbook on PTR, and you may find the areas that it reflects the most directly, they're both based on referrals.
Right.
And they're based on referral partnerships. Now, the how to get there is what I mapped out, and the class PTR talked about creating a strategy, but it didn't give you the tactical execution.
Right.
So I get, and I'm very careful about, I don't think it was you that told me. There was a marketing professional once, though, that told me there are no original ideas.
Right.
There's just ideas that are captured and then adapted. And I mean, that's what marketing is, and that's what innovation is.
Right.
But I think that I learned at that point, I'm going to scale and grow, and I want to do it through technology, and I want to do it through systems and through creating products. And then I started looking, and about 3 years ago, I really dove into everything that was available online and the fact that you could go digital with all of this. And then instead of serving one person, I could serve 10,000 with the same content.
Right.
And that's kind of when I decided and how I decided to take that course and grow. But if you do opt to work with other professionals, make sure that you are protecting your interests and that you protect your intellectual property,
Right.
that you do take the appropriate steps to copyright and
Yes.
trademark the concepts. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough. I'm happy to introduce you to some amazing attorneys
Right.
that can walk you through doing that.
Right.
But
So the last thing I want to ask you about this sustainability, and then we got to move on to insight, is talk to me about how, like in my world, it's keeping the funnel full, but doing the billing and, doing all these other fulfillment and all these different processes and managing this and managing that. Talk to me about, as far as sustainability goes, how you handle, keeping we talked about not trading time for money and things like that. So talk to me about how you keep all that in balance. And
well, what I do now, I practice a concept that's called the model week. And Michael Hyatt talks about it. He's a thought leader for he wrote a book called Platform. And if you are thinking about creating an idea, or turning it into a business, an idea into a business, check out his book called Platform, because it's really, really good. And he does talk about taking your ideas and your concepts and scaling and growing it.
mm-hmm.
But he talks about a concept called a model week. And what I learned with Sandler is that you've got pay time and no pay time. And you can fall into the planning and building and all this other stuff that doesn't really contribute directly to revenue. And you have to have all the things make up a week. But where entrepreneurs, I think, fall down is they don't allocate the amount of time to the task that it needs to take. So Parkinson's law intrudes. You know, Parkinson's law, Murphy's law is if anything can go wrong, it will.
Mhm.
Parkinson's law is another absolute that's out there that says a task will directly absorb any minute that you will attribute to it.
Right.
So if you don't schedule your time and block your time, you're going to end up with a whole lot of non-productive stuff that sucks up your focus and your energy. And he's got, and this is actually one of the very first modules that we dig into whenever we do work with professionals, is creating a model week. And I basically did it through, and this is still something I struggle with. So I'm gonna tell you right now that I am a work in progress here.
Sure.
But what I've learned is that if I focus my attention on the one thing that I really need to stay at the forefront of with my life and my business, and then align the decisions that I make and my time to advancing that one thing, I'm going to get stuff done. And it's when you bring in all the multiple priorities and you try to do too many things at once and you get distracted by shiny things, that you're going to end up making a lot of the same mistakes I did, which is what caused me to repeat like year 3 for 5 years. And I actually had one client that I asked him how long he'd been in business, and he said, "How long have I been in business, or how long have I been a functional business leader?" I said, "Well, what's the difference?" He says, "Well, I've had my doors open for 23 years. He said, "The problem is I repeated year 2 for 17 of them."
Right. Right. I get that. I totally get
Yeah.
that. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, and let's talk about some lessons learned, right? And um, tell me what, off the top of your head, what's the biggest um, kind of mistake that you made that you would warn people about in starting up your own enterprise?
Well, I think the biggest mistake that I made, like if I think about the significant setbacks I've had in my business, it was trusting the wrong people
Hmm.
and making bad hiring decisions.
Right.
And, I teach people how to recruit now, and you still fall into, even when you know the right process, there's something about when it's yours. It's kind of like the reason why, you make bad decisions about life mates. At the moment, you think it's a good decision
Right.
and you get lured in. And what I've learned is that it's much better to engage at different levels until you are sure that you're going the right direction and that you're going together.
Right.
And that's probably been one of my biggest lessons.
I get it. Yeah. So, and to that end, you know, I've I've met several businesses that had tried to absorb my business or wanted to partner and things. And the ironic thing to me was I could do everything they could do, but they couldn't do what I did. So it was kind of a, you know,
It's an unequal.
yeah,
Yeah.
right,
You it needs to be, if you're going to collaborate, it needs to be a meeting of equals where you each bring a lot to the other partner. And I think if I look at the partnerships that I've been in, because I had originally there were 3 partners, and then we had 2 partners, and then I've had subcontractors and independent contractors and employees. If I think about every one of the reason the partnerships didn't work out is we did not have the same end goal in mind.
right,
They were always looking for a job, and that was the difference.
right,
And I am not about what I do because it's a job. I am here, and you and I formed this because people need help.
yeah,
And we're more about shared alignment on serving a group that needs our help. And that's where the opportunity lies for us to also scale. And that doesn't mean that we're a not for profit or that there's a Red Cross on the side of my house.
right,
It means that at the heart of everything I do, there's a social cause that is my motivation, which is so much more I think, inspiring than just trying to earn a living,
I
if
know.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And finding others that have that same alignment is just so hard.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think that's why you and I can work well together, is because I've worked with a lot of people who maybe let their ego get in the way of things. And um, it's both of us are able to take, maybe not, I don't want to say criticism, but suggestions, and go, okay, I'm not arguing. I'm not saying no. Can you explain to me why that is? And we're able to adapt. And we both have like a servant's mentality, right? So I think, in my estimation, it's great to have partners that have different skill sets than you, so that you match together. But you also have to have, like you said, the same kind of goal in mind and the same destination for this journey. So, well,
Well, and it's so critically important that people, again, it's motivation.
right, right. So we are at the 11:30 hour, and I know that I could actually, you and I will probably have more of this conversation after, once everybody is logged off. But let's go ahead and move on to the what is it? Let's talk about the Women's Business Center. Keep going. One more.
Oh, yes, because I want to make sure that you all know they have an amazing library of resources, and they are free. So I've got someone that messaged me about intellectual property. So if you go look at the Kansas City, so wbc.eventbrite.com is, even if you just want to type it in. And also, if you will go look at your invitation and the reminder for today, there is a link at the bottom that will take you directly to the Women's Business Center page. And what I would love for you to do is go and check out what their content is. And there's so much stuff there for you to learn about. And we're also, we're just a part of, we're helping on the sales and marketing side, but they have so many other options available in terms of curriculum. So I do recommend that you go check that out. The other thing is, if you are interested in having someone that can guide you through this process and has been down that path before you, and trust me, the road that we've been on, it wasn't paved, and there have been a lot of potholes, but Chris and I put
Right.
together here's what we learned through this, and how we've also successfully counseled a lot of other people down this same journey. And with Brand U, we basically teach you how to create a knowledge product, and how to not, maybe the knowledge product is how you're going to sell fractional services, what that looks like, how you're going to get to revenue with it. That's the path that we walk through with the Brand U program. And we are going to be kicking off our first group later on in the month. We're also going to be sending out a training class that walks you through, it's basically an overview of the Brand U process. And it talks about how to build a fractional business. And there's a lot of stuff we're going to talk about in that training session. So make sure you stay tuned for that and hop in on that. There's no cost aside from your time, and you're going to gain so much insight from it. And we'd love to help. We're here to serve. And even with our free content, our goal is to make sure that you walk away from every one of the sessions that you experience with us with something that will help you make money and be successful with your sales and marketing effort in the coming week.
Right.
So we're all about helping you now, wherever you may happen to be. But this is what we're looking for. And we would also have an ask of you, in that if you found value in our conversation today, please share and let others know that you found this helpful, and that you'd share our invitations. These sessions are entirely free, and again, it's how Chris and I are giving back.
Right. Exactly. And for those of you who are interested in this Brand U, it's a step by step by step. We ran through a beta, and one of the things that we adjusted is, showing you how to proof of concept, and how to brand yourself, and how to find out who your target audience is, and how to, just to do every little bit of it. And we started adding anecdotes into it and stories to kind of explain things. So I'm really excited about this brand new thing because it's Brandon and I were going through and fixing part of it and rewriting some stuff, and I literally the hairs on my arms and the back of my neck stood up because I was so excited about this. So this is all the stuff that I wish I knew when I was starting up my business and didn't. So, and we want to thank you all for showing up today. You'll all get a link to the video of this so you can watch it again at your leisure, and you'll get the PowerPoint and all that kind of stuff. So all these links that you see for Business Center or for Brand U and for the Women's Business Center, you'll have those links available to you. And keep in mind, you can be a man and go to the Women's Business Center stuff too. So don't.
That's right. It is. We're all about the co-ed.
Right,
So
exactly.
come one, come all. It'll be great. Thank you so much for your time today. I know that we're asking for a significant investment whenever you do devote an hour of time to us. And
Sure.
I just appreciate you. And my heart is with serving people right now that are really trying to figure out where they're being led and what the right path is in order to get there. And I just can't say thank you enough for investing your time with us. And we're delighted to help you. You know, we totally get the Zig Ziglar interpretation of Emerson's law, which is you can get anything you want in the world as long as you help enough other people get what they want.
Exactly.
So we are here to serve. So thank you so much for taking time with us today. We really appreciate you, and have a wonderful holiday weekend.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.